Love is a strange thing. You think it will last forever, that your bond with the person you chose is unbreakable. I, too, thought my love for Elena would withstand anything. I built a successful business, spent hours on end working, not for myself, but for us, our future. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, ones that can shatter everything you hold dear. It all began when the late nights and distant stares started creeping into our relationship. I used to believe that when a marriage falls apart, it's due to 1,000 small reasons. Now, I know it can break with one single betrayal. I wasn't the type to be paranoid. I trusted Elena completely. We had been married for 5 years, and in that time, I'd never imagined she could hurt me in any way. But there were signs, small, almost invisible hints that something was off. It started innocently enough. She would spend hours on her phone, texting someone, always with a smile that didn't seem meant for me. When I'd ask who she was talking to, she would brush it off. Oh, just a friend. At first, I believed her. I mean, why wouldn't I? I was always busy with work, pulling long hours, traveling, and providing. Maybe she just needed to connect with someone while I wasn't around. But slowly, her behavior changed. She became distant, distracted even when we were together. She would come home late from errands that seemed to take much longer than necessary, and when I asked where she had been, her answers became vague. Something didn't sit right, but I still couldn't bring myself to confront her until things began to fall into place. The real crack came one weekend. I had decided to take the day off, something I hadn't done in months. I wanted to surprise Elena with a spontaneous day out. But when I came home earlier than usual, I noticed something odd. She wasn't expecting me. I opened the door to find her sitting on the couch, her phone in hand, giggling at the screen. I walked quietly behind her, trying to catch a glimpse of who she was texting. That's when I saw the name. Daniel, my younger brother. My blood froze. The messages weren't innocent. They were flirty, full of inside jokes I had no part in, and my brother was the last person I thought I had to worry about. My first reaction was disbelief. Daniel? He and I were close. We grew up together, shared everything, our childhood dreams, successes, and failures. But seeing his name pop up on her phone like this, something dark stirred in me. A cold sweat formed on my skin, and my mind raced. Was it just friendly banter, or was something more going on? I didn't say anything that day. I needed more evidence. A part of me hoped I was wrong, that I was reading too much into it. But something deep down told me the truth would be far worse. Over the next few weeks, I became more observant. Elena's behavior grew more suspicious. She was taking more business trips, even though her job didn't require much travel. When she wasn't at work or home, her whereabouts became increasingly harder to track. I noticed her phone was always on silent now, tucked away when I was around. The once easy flow of conversation between us had dried up into awkward silences and shallow small talk. I couldn't let it go. My suspicions consumed me. One night, while she was in the shower, I took her phone and went through the messages between her and Daniel. What I found confirmed my worst fears. The texts were full of flirtation, coded language, and plans to meet up when I wasn't around. It was more than emotional. There were references to physical encounters, moments they had shared together while I was working late or traveling for business. The messages painted a vivid picture. They had been meeting at various places, a hotel, an apartment Daniel had rented. It was all happening right under my nose, and I had been blind to it. My mind was a whirlwind of anger, hurt, and confusion. I couldn't stay silent anymore. That night, as she came out of the shower, I asked her straight out, "Elena, is there something going on between you and Daniel?" Her face dropped. She tried to deny it at first, but the look in her eyes gave it away. She was guilty, and she knew it. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, her voice wavering. I showed her the messages. "These," I said coldly. "Explain these." Her eyes filled with panic, and she stumbled over her words. "It's not what you think," she said. "It's just been. It's complicated." "Complicated?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You're sleeping with my brother, Elena. How much more complicated can it get?" She started to cry, but the tears didn't move me. I had loved her deeply, but now all I felt was betrayal. Still, I wasn't ready to let everything crash down in that moment. I needed more than a confrontation. I needed to understand how far this had gone. I followed them. I became my own detective, tracking her every move when I had the time. There was a sick satisfaction in catching them red-handed. One evening, when she told me she was meeting friends for dinner, I followed her to a hotel on the outskirts of town. My heart raced as I sat in my car, watching her walk inside. Minutes later, Daniel arrived. They didn't even try to hide it. I watched them embrace in the hotel lobby before disappearing upstairs. The sight of it made me nauseous. I wanted to barge in, confront them both in the worst possible way. But I held back. I wasn't ready for that scene yet. Instead, I needed to gather evidence to confront them in a way that left no room for excuses. Over the next few weeks, I hired a private investigator to follow them. I needed more than just gut feelings and my own paranoia. The investigator didn't disappoint. He captured photos of them meeting in secret at restaurants, parks, and even my brother's apartment. The images made it real. There was no denying the truth anymore. They were in deep. Elena wasn't just having a fling with Daniel. It was an ongoing affair, and from the looks of it, they were planning to run away together. The messages I later found on Elena's laptop confirmed it. They talked about how they couldn't wait for me to be out of the picture, how they'd live together, maybe even start a new life in another city. The investigators' reports were hard to stomach. There were details of their physical relationship that made my skin crawl. They weren't just meeting to talk or share feelings. They had been physically involved for months at hotels, at Daniel's apartment, and once, even in our own home while I was away on a business trip. The betrayal was as much physical as it was emotional. The stolen kisses, the late-night touches, the way they met in secret places to escape from me, it was a deep, deliberate deception. They spoke in their messages about the first time it happened. It was at a family gathering of all places where Daniel had comforted her while I was distracted with business calls. It started innocently enough, with him putting his arm around her in a way that seemed like support. But soon, it escalated into a secret kiss when no one was looking, and from there, it only grew. Their affair became more frequent. They met in his apartment for hours, indulging in a romance that should never have existed. Each time I was too busy with work, they seized the opportunity. The physical aspect of their relationship grew stronger. Passionate moments that were supposed to be mine were shared with my own brother. The reports confirmed that this wasn't just an emotional connection, they were physically intimate on multiple occasions, and it hurt more than words could describe. I wasn't the type to let something like this slide. I had sacrificed too much for Elena and worked too hard to let her and Daniel get away with this. I wanted them to suffer for what they had done. So, I planned. I decided to let them believe I was still in the dark while I prepared my revenge. The first step was securing evidence, something that would destroy both of them beyond repair. I collected the investigators' photos, printed out their text messages, and saved every detail that would incriminate them. But that wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel the pain I felt. I started by quietly moving assets out of our shared accounts. I knew that Elena and Daniel were counting on my wealth to fuel their future together, so I made sure to drain those accounts before they could touch a single dollar. Then, I confronted my lawyer and prepared for the next step, a divorce that would leave her with nothing. I arranged for one final confrontation, but not before making sure the humiliation would be public. I invited both Elena and Daniel over to our house for what they thought would be a family dinner. I told them I wanted to make things right between my wife and my brother to clear the air. They both came, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. As they sat across from me at the dinner table, I could barely contain the rage bubbling inside me. The tension in the room was thick. Elena looked nervous, while Daniel tried to act casual, as if nothing was wrong. I made small talk, pouring wine and pretending to be the gracious host. And then, I pulled out the envelope. "What's that?" Elena asked, her voice shaky. "Just some things I thought you both should see," I replied calmly, sliding the envelope across the table. Inside were the photos, the text, and the detailed reports from the investigator. Elena's face drained of color as she flipped through the evidence. Daniel froze, his expression shifting from confusion to fear. "What is this?" he stammered. "It's everything, Daniel," I said, my voice cold. "Everything you and Elena have been hiding from me." There was no shouting, no dramatic outburst. Just a suffocating silence that hung in the air as they both realized the depth of what I knew. Elena broke down in tears, trying to apologize, trying to explain, but I wasn't interested in her excuses. I had loved her unconditionally, given her everything, and she had thrown it all away. Daniel sat there, speechless, knowing there was no way out. The guilt was written all over his face. "I hope it was worth it," I said, standing up. "Because from this moment on, neither of you will be a part of my life." I walked out of the house, leaving them both to sit in the mess they had created. The next day, I filed for divorce and made sure Elena would walk away with nothing. She had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and now she would face the consequences. In the weeks that followed, Elena and Daniel's relationship crumbled under the weight of their guilt. They had thought they could escape and build a new life together, but all they had done was destroy everything around them. Elena tried to reach out to me, begging for forgiveness, but I had nothing left to give her. Daniel moved away, unable to face the shame of what he had done. Our family was torn apart, and I had to rebuild my life from the ground up. But in the end, I came out stronger. I learned that betrayal can destroy you if you let it, but it can also make you wiser, sharper, and more resilient. I lost a wife and a brother, but I found myself in the wreckage, and that's something no one can take away from me.